Hello and welcome to Right Now. It's great to be back. It's the Friday after the weekend before, the Friday where absolutely nothing happened. Nothing. Look over there. There's a cat video. No one took to the streets. No one demanded their freedoms be restored in what was probably one of the largest protests London's ever seen. The mainstream media would rather you knew nothing about this mass movement of all sexes, ages, colours, shapes, sizes, all coming together to say enough is enough. We're the BBC. Focus on what we're saying instead. Or better still, here's some more fear porn to really compound the hopelessness of your meaningless existence. After all, we care not of your plight. As long as you can scrounge around and find enough coins to pay your TV licence, then we're all good. Eminent virologist Mariana Spring, the head of BBC's disinformation department, the Musketeer in the marigolds, she was in attendance, obviously, to smear hundreds of thousands of freedom-loving people as a small clique of abnormal and dangerous folk. Why does a disinformation department need a disinformation department? If anyone could tell me that, that'd be great. Send me an email. Hotel owner John Mappin, he's going to be coming on to tell us why he's actually banning the BBC from the rooms of his Camelot Castle Hotel. Sounds to me like he's looking after his guests' best interests, to be honest. We have writer and newspaper columnist James Dellingpole on the line to discuss freedom of speech. Mass censorship is vital for the protection of the COVID narrative, and we can't veer away from that now, can we, you Nazi? We have, in my view, one of the best journalists in the world coming on today. We have Whitney Webb. She's going to talk to us about her experiences in Chile and why her and her family escaped from the country. We'll also be talking about the future cyber pandemic. It's another badly kept secret. But first, grab a TV remote, if you've still got a TV, and flick through the news channels. India, 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 India. It feels very much like the coverage Wuhan and Italy were getting when the West was being sold the first lockdowns over a year ago. Yohan Tengra, he's our Indian correspondent and he's on the ground in Mumbai. He's joining us now.
As countries across the globe scramble for COVID-19 vaccines, India has access to millions of doses.
In January, India launched the world's largest immunization drive. India says starting this week, it will target 270 million senior citizens and those at risk.
In India, the pandemic continues to worsen, with more than 200,000 deaths officially confirmed.
I know that people say that, India, people are dying in the streets. That's bullshit, right? Because I'm living here and I've been here since January because my husband is Indian. What we have in here is restrictions. So basically we're going through a strong lockdown that the shops are only allowed to open from 7 a.m. until 11 a.m. All these videos you have seen about Delhi, people dying in the streets, that's not true.
Hi Yohan, thanks for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it. All we're seeing in the media here is all about India. So can you tell us from someone that's there, what exactly is happening in India at the moment?
Hey Gareth, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. Thanks to Jamie as well for giving me the opportunity to do this. It's been mad out here since the last month at least. I personally have been, researching this stuff for the last 5 years, and we've really been working hard since the last year to raise awareness among people with respect to what's really going on and what the end game of all of this really is. So things were kind of getting better until, say last month or so. Things had mellowed down. The first wave had died down since around October of last year. And, people were starting to relax a little bit. Things were starting to open up. People are just getting back to their lives almost. And then it's almost as if a month ago, everything changed and the script totally flipped and it's totally, it's total chaos again. So I see a lot of stuff being portrayed in the Western media, which is why I understand, probably you guys wanted to have me on as well, because there's a lot of fear mongering going on with respect to, say, India being the new China or the new Italy with respect to what's going on here right now. So I'm not here to say, there's no situation at all. And everything's just fine, because it's not. I personally work in the health space myself. So I know through my own sources and trusted sources that some people are getting sicker. But, why all of this is really happening and, why there's really a burden on the hospitals and, the oxygen supplies and everything is something that's a combination of a multitude of factors that we can discuss. So I just like to tell the audience that there is a shortage of beds that's happening right now. In many parts of India, at least in Mumbai, Mumbai is the kind of financial capital of India. So this has been going on in Mumbai since the last a couple of weeks or so. It started to catch up in Delhi and Bangalore. But there's currently a shortage of beds going on, so people aren't being able to get beds in hospitals. And there's a supply problem with respect to oxygen, as well as with respect to some antiviral drugs like remdesivir, which are sort of touted to be lifesavers and treatments for COVID. When we know that's really not true. We can get into that as well. So my main premise here is basically that what's going on right now is true. There is a shortage of beds, going on. I mean, I personally know people from my own team who called me like 2-3 weeks back saying that someone I know needs an ICU bed. So I know personally through my own sources, and this it's not a hoax. Like, there's actually a problem, but we can maybe get into why all of this is really happening. Do you have any thoughts on that, Gareth?
Well, I mean, what I've seen is obviously, I mean, we shared an article around February time talking about the fact that India was basically untouched by all of this, and then obviously you had a mass vaccine rollout, which now the number of vaccine corresponds almost identically with this huge spike in cases and these issues that are happening. So from me looking in, obviously, I'm thousands of miles away, but from me looking in, that looks dodgy to me. Is that something that you're looking at as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's one of the factors that I want to discuss. So okay, we can start out like this. I think there are like 3-4 reasons that are compounding into this sort of crisis becoming what it is today. And one of them is definitely the vaccination rollout. So just to give some context, our vaccination rollout started in January, like around Jan 1st or 2nd, the vaccines were approved, and then they started giving it to age groups. So it started out with like the 60, plus 60 and above, and people who really had health issues. Then they lowered it to around 45 or so, a month or so later, and now finally they're coming to like the 18 plus category, which is where I would kind of fit in. So as this vaccine drive kind of kicked off, there's a lot of hesitancy in the beginning with, I mean, you can find articles on this online, but a lot of healthcare workers were hesitant to take the vaccine. There were many who were kind of trying to fake it, and they were not taking it basically because the two vaccines that have been approved in our country are AstraZeneca's vaccine, which is, what sort of being banned abroad in European countries for the whole blood clot, controversy that's been taking place. And we have another vaccine that's called the Covaxin, which is basically an indigenous company out here has made it. But then again, like both these companies have massive ties to Bill Gates. So, we have these two vaccines and they were kind of approved in a very shoddy way. So there's a lot of vaccine, say what they call vaccine hesitancy. I mean, but then like a lot of people were skeptical because of the way these vaccines were approved. So there was a lot of vaccine hesitancy in the beginning. So I think in order to combat that, the main reason why this is happening is to get people vaccinated. That's really what I believe, because they were having a problem in the start because the cases had started plummeting and people were started to get back to their lives, and no one was really scared of COVID. And there were articles in the media also, I mean, talking about how the variants aren't really a problem in India and stuff. So because of that whole narrative, I think they had to flip the switch and really get the people scared in order to sort of get vaccinated. And I think it's working, because I see, the government has spent a lot of resources in pulling influencers in out here. I mean, local influencers to tell people to get the vaccine. So there are, I mean, influencers with following of thousands and, sort of lakhs of people who are saying that, just take the vaccine, whatever it is, whether you have heart issues, whether you have comorbidities, it doesn't matter. Just go and take the vaccine. And I mean, they're like sort of they're literally paying people all out to, go forward with the vaccine. And especially they're trying to influence the youth out here with respect to, getting the vaccine uptake. So I definitely think that's one of the main factors behind what's going on. And we've seen that kind of play out as well with respect to the adverse events. So although in the media, like the government has only acknowledged, say, 600 to 700 deaths until now, but personally, I mean, since I have a following of, say, at least thousands out here, if not over a lakh, and, we are connected to many people who have many people under them. So we know through our own surveys and stuff that people are really facing serious adverse events, like from paralysis to so many deaths that have taken place. Famous people have died. Like there's one actor in South India who died after taking the vaccine, and a co-actor of his who kind of really got angry and started blaming the vaccine for it, and started blaming, like, he's talking against the masks and our whole narrative, right? So he was basically, I mean, he got arrested for that, for spreading false information, and they're not even giving him bail. So that's the kind of situation that exists right now, because I mean, he had a big impact, his head, and this actor was basically employed to sell the vaccine. So he landed up dying because he took the vaccine after being paid to mostly promote it, and that created a big controversy out here. So there have been many deaths that have taken place out here after the vaccine, and the official numbers are highly unreported. So I definitely think that's adding to the entire burden that's taking place on the hospitals right now. And there are many reasons why the shortage is happening, and I think the main reason for it is misdiagnosis. So we all know that the PCR test is not meant to tell us if a person's sick or not. And all the data that's coming out right now, like even though all this fear mongering and doom and gloom is going on about how deadly the second wave is, the official data overall for the country, the case fatality rate hasn't gone up. It used to be over 3% last year, and it's been under 1.5% since a couple of months, and that hasn't changed. The infection fatality rate is even lower, which is calculated based on like how many people have antibodies. So that's even lower, and that's around at 0.1%. So both our case fatality rate as well as the infection fatality rate of India is similar to the flu as it is in most countries, and that's not a controversial statement. That's from official sources. So on a countrywide level, nothing has changed between last year and this year. Even our own authorities admit that it's mostly asymptomatic cases. So there's some fantastic headlines out here. I mean, just one city in Bangalore. When I was researching my paper for the PCR that we just wrote for the government, there was a headline that came up which basically said that 96% of cases in Bangalore were asymptomatic. So they've literally just fueled this whole crisis. Even in my city of Mumbai, it's been the same. It's actually been very mad out here because in Mumbai they literally gave the municipality targets to go out and test people on the streets. So they literally had testing targets of like thousands, like 45,000, at least 45,000 tests a day, in Mumbai at various spots. So they are literally going out and testing healthy people, just picking them off the street. And then if someone refuses the test, they can do a case against them under the Epidemic Diseases Act. So this is how they've really been trying to get the people to get scared by driving the cases up through the PCR test. And the PCR test cutoff in India is officially countrywide, it's at 35. And we know that level of cutoff, if someone's coming positive at 35, according to at least one study by Jaffer et al., they talk about how like the PCR compares with the gold standard of viral culture. So they find like a 3% match over there, which is like a 97% false positive. That was a study that was used in Portugal in the court to basically, win the case against the PCR. So this is, a problem with diagnosis. I've heard this from my friends who are doctors as well, who sort of know a lot of people in the medical industry out here, that, this is a problem of misdiagnosis. So what's happening is that a lot of beds in the hospitals are being allocated just to COVID. And the people are basically having a misdiagnosis problem. Like, let's say someone goes in with cancer or autoimmune disease or something like that, and they do a COVID test on them and they come positive. Then they basically have to treat them in a COVID hospital, which is like a separate thing. And so what I'm hearing from doctors is that there are a lot of beds available which are for, like, say, normal categories, which they have kept separate, and a lot of those are empty. But because of this misdiagnosis crisis, and it's not even just the PCR test. I mean, like, they are going all out to just increase the number of positives anyhow. There's so many states in India that have started using CT scans, which are not specific to SARS-CoV-2 and which are, pretty broad. I mean, like, you can have ground glass opacities in a CT scan for many different reasons, not just for SARS-CoV-2. So they're trying to get positives anyhow. I mean, even if someone just has symptoms which are very broad, and they still test negative, they still put them in the COVID category. So, like, all of this is really putting a big strain on the beds. Plus, compared with the fact that a lot of people are, like, they've been put into so much fear, and the knowledge about the PCR hasn't really got out, although we're doing our best and that word is getting out here. But since people look at a positive test and get so scared, the whole narrative is that, okay, if you test positive, then you need to attack it, like, then, otherwise it's going to get worse. So because of that fear, a lot of people with mild symptoms are kind of going and getting hospitalized. Like, I personally know a couple of people because I'm involved, like, in a health practice out here, and I'm a functional medicine practitioner. So, we know of people who literally have gone and get themselves admitted in the hospital just based on a positive test and a mild symptoms. And then they are actually, like, burdening the capacity and taking the beds away from those who actually need it. So the people who are really sick, who are really having some sort of bad pneumonia and who really need medical support, who need oxygen, who need, like, oxygen therapy, they are not getting access to that. So because of this whole, like, I think the major player in this whole crisis, along with the vaccines definitely right now, is the fact that, you know, this whole misdiagnosis is taking place, which is really putting a strain on the hospital capacities. Compare that to the fact that we're having an oxygen shortage as well. So there's like shortage of oxygen cylinders going on in different states and cities. So my friends who are in the medical industry, who sort of are doctors, they told me that like even this is pretty contrived, because earlier they used to have limits, you know, where they would give oxygen to someone whose saturation dipped to like 88%. But now they've kind of changed it. So if a patient requests, you know, oxygen, and even if the saturation is at 93 to 94%, they still give them oxygen. India has like changed how it's exported oxygen. So in the last year, it actually like doubled its exports of oxygen compared to what it did 2 years back. So there are many factors that are really causing this right now. I wouldn't say it's just the vaccines. I also think like this misdiagnosis problem is big, because they've really got people to get scared of positives. So there are a lot of people who are just going. I mean, like I've seen, you know, it was just my hypothesis earlier, but I saw videos of like doctors who are genuinely crying and telling people that, you know, there's no capacity in the hospitals. Please stay at home. You know, people are coming in who are occupying beds who don't really need them, and you know, people who really need them aren't getting it. So there's of course like, you know, all of this happening, and you know, the deaths are being amplified because of the faulty treatments as well.
Well, if you don't mind, Yohan, first of all, thank you so much for talking to us and telling us what's going on over there, because obviously we get the BBC here, and you know, I'm not the biggest believer in that. So if you'd come on again, maybe next week or week after, whatever, and just give us an update, that would be great. If you don't mind doing that, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll do that, definitely.
Magic.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yohan. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
To continue watching this episode of Right Now, please click on to ickonic.com.